Welcome to another By Design discussion where we believe organizations should be run by design and not left to chance. Today I'm here with my good friend, ex-colleague, and business entrepreneur, Corey Sanders. We wanted to chat with Corey today about buying businesses, enhancing the team, and improving the performance of the organization once you take it over. So Corey, how the heck are you doing today? And more importantly, how's that new baby?
Doing great. Feels a little weird to be back in the building that I used to work in, but doing great. Do have a 6-week-old at home, and so a little sleep deprived, but I'm here. I'm feeling good.
Good. Well,
Ready to talk about what I enjoy.
yeah, well, I appreciate you taking time out of your business empire and daddy duties to sit down with us today. Just start by, I know we used to work together at Evoco. Your kind of next step was you branched out and started, I think you bought a car wash business to start, but now you're in the recruiting business, the printing business, all these other businesses. Talk to us a little bit about how you made that decision to go out and start purchasing
Sure.
businesses.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of this is about being in the right place at the right time. I mean, that's really what it boils down to. I mean, I was lucky enough to be working at Advoco doing corporate recruiting and getting into the talent development and the strategy, and not just how we recruit great talent, but how do we retain that talent? How do we build those teams that want to show up and work hard and work well every day? And that opportunity and that experience, gave me the vision to want to go out and do that for companies, for businesses that I would have an ownership stake in. And again, kind of back to that right place at the right time, having this experience and having a good professional network and community. I got linked up with a good buddy of mine who I went to college with, who's an entrepreneur himself, and a little bit further along in his, business acquisition, real estate acquisition career. But he kind of knew what I was doing at Advoco with the HR and the talent development recruiting piece, and he found a deal that he wanted to, invest in, which was this car wash. And he one day just called me up and said, "Hey, do you want to buy a car wash?" And I was like, "What in the world are you talk about? Is this a multi-level marketing scheme?" Like,
Money laundering, what do we give in?
exactly. And then once I vetted it and found out that he was being very serious, his perspective was he didn't like dealing with people. He knew the HR kind of team development piece was not what energized him, but he knew that's what I was doing. And he also knew, again, right place at the right time. If you want to say a global pandemic, not a great thing, but working from home, realizing there was some flexibility and some extra hours in the day, to really go and develop a team, and enhance, a staff at a car wash, as simple as that may sound. And so that's how I got my start. And I realized I was working this corporate job for a company that I loved, but I really enjoyed the drive out to the car wash, to meet with the people, to make decisions, to figure out how to, enhance and optimize that business. And it was kind of this weird thing where I had this kind of buttoned up, really great corporate gig, but going to the car wash as a business owner and having that ownership stake was something that was in some ways kind of addicting, right? And so we did a lot of work there. That car wash led to another opportunity, in the car wash space. So we purchased a second one. And then I was at that point where I really was ready to find the next opportunity that could be the leading, the leading indicator for me to take a step out of corporate America. And that's where this print shop came. And we worked very closely with a corporate real estate broker and partner for us. And he had a deal come across his desk, and he said, "I know you're looking for something." It came to us, we looked at it, did our due diligence, and that's how that came to be. And so I spent a lot of time, about a year, really optimizing that team, getting it to a point where they can function, day to day, without me being there, which has then opened up my newest venture, my recruiting talent firm, Elevate Talent Solutions, which has now given me what I really enjoyed, helping, businesses grow and teams develop. Now I have the time to go out and do that. So that's a little bit of a roundabout way, but it really is about being in the right place at the right time and not being afraid to jump in.
Yeah, I really want to attack this printing press uh, deal for a little bit because I feel like that really goes to what we're trying to do and how we're trying to help. Turns out it was good for you, maybe not so much if that person would have called us, maybe we could have made it a little more expensive for you. Um,
Glad you didn't.
but as you were walking through that, like, kind of what were you looking at as the green flags for the business, and maybe if there were any red flags, kind of what were you looking for in those 2 areas?
Yeah, and those the green flags and red flags are so closely related, right? And for us, what stood out as well, I'll start with the green flags, was the previous owner had owned this business for 17 years. That's a pretty long time to be in business, and because of that, you're developing, a strong customer base, and especially in the printing industry, if you look at a book of business, for example, or the current jobs in a print shop, between 80 to 85% of those jobs are repeat jobs. So really that 15% are the new customers that you're trying to impress because you want the numbers will say they're gonna come back if you do a good job, right? So 17 years in the business, with a customer base that had been, just developed over time, that was great for us, and then one of the things that my business partner and I looked at was, okay, let's look at the total revenue on an annual basis. Let's look at the biggest customers that they have. And then what percentage of that total revenue do the top customers make? Because if you get into a situation where, one customer is worth 30% of your business, if in a business, ownership change, they decide this is a great opportunity to go look elsewhere, well, then you're out 30% of your revenue, right?
Yeah, it sounds like you're really digging into the client. We call it client capital. It's one of the 4 Cs we talk about a lot, but you started there to kind of attack that.
Yeah, I mean, you start with the numbers, right? You wanna make sure that there is, consistent, strong, steady income. You wanna make sure the profit, and loss report is showing that you're gonna be cash flowing and that you can forecast out that, you're gonna be in a strong cash position, obviously, but also making sure that in a transition, you're gonna feel pretty secure in maintaining that book of business while you're learning, while you're growing, while you're kind of getting your feet set and understanding what this new industry is before you're ready to kind of put the foot on the gas and start growing it. But yes, that the customer piece of that, in addition to just the financials, were really the big, the big green flags that we looked at. Um, and then some of the things that were a little bit of red flags, alarm bells, whatever you want to call them, was it was very clear that the previous owner was very involved in the day-to-day operations. There were, I think when we took over, there were 6 other employees in addition to himself. And his mindset was that he needed to not just only be the business owner and do the accounting and the payroll and the taxes and all the fun ownership stuff, but he also wanted to be in production. He wanted to have his thumb in every project and every job that came through that shop. And it really didn't give him the chance to grow the business, right? He was doing some online marketing, but he wasn't going out and selling. He wasn't building a network professionally in the community. And so to us, it was a little bit of a red flag of, okay, he's got his thumb in everything. What do his employees do? Are they making any decisions? But it was very clear that that was going to be the biggest challenge coming in because I told my business partner, the numbers look great. This seems like a wonderful, opportunity, but I don't desire to be, running the presses
Yeah,
and
you don't wanna be
cutting business cards like that. It's a very important function to the job, but I want to work on the business. I don't want to work in the
that's
business.
what I was getting ready to say. He was in it, you wanted to be on it.
Exactly. Exactly. And so while it was a red flag, again, looking for how do we get around that, there was staff. There were people there that knew how things worked. And so for us, it was then a decision, do we believe that we can train those folks to truly have ownership and process, be decision makers in the business, so that then the day-to-day operations are not something that I have to get involved in from an owner perspective, but now I can work on just developing my management team and understanding their needs, understanding processes, feeling out what their pain points are, so that then we can go in and figure out how to make things better. When you've got one person making all the decisions, they're going to do it the way that they want to do it. And sometimes that may work. It may be the right way, it might be the right route to go, but there may be other ways to approach it, right? But if you're a single-minded business owner that's in the business, you're not gonna be open to listening to that, and you're basically roadblocking yourself. And again, it was successful, right? Like, he was doing a good book of business, but it could have been that much more. But because of how involved he was at every level of the business, he had he had basically taken away the vision of how he can make it better.
Yeah, and you're again speaking my language. So you started with the client capital,
Yeah,
went into the financials, and then now it sounds like you focused the next step was to focus on the human capital. What do we have? Do we have a great team? Do we have a team that can keep this running, keep that 80% repeat business coming back, which allowed you then to just kind of the opportunity piece, might be putting words in your mouth, but the opportunity piece then is we get them involved running the business. I can now focus solely on growing it. So that's your ROI for the purchase price, right? You say,
exactly.
I'll buy it for X. I know I can grow it because he wasn't focusing on the sales or whatever. And so you guys saw an opportunity to go there.
Exactly, and I will say it's, one of the lessons that I've learned in business ownership is that it's never gonna be exactly what you expect because, again, on the surface, during due diligence in this print shop deal, like, it seemed like it would be super easy just to, transition the previous owner out, assign new responsibilities to some of the employees that had been there for a while and kind of understood how things work, and then immediately we would be growing the business. And it took a while to almost undo some of the some of the bad habits and some of that micromanaging that they were getting, because what I found is I had a ton of really talented people, but at the end of the day they never had decision making power. They always were looking over their shoulder. They always were having to ask the previous owner, "Should I do this? Can I do this? Can I do that?" And they were so conditioned that most of the time that answer was no, that they would just kind of sit back and just kind of exist. And so I really had to spend time redeveloping, kind of breaking down those barriers, reinstilling the confidence that should match the talent that these employees have in order to get them functioning. And so I kind of thought like, oh, maybe a month or two, I'll be ready to start, growing the business. And it took me almost a year, which was worth it, but we still, our culture, improved. Our folks wanted to show up to work. They started to, believe in themselves. It was really, having the opportunity to go in and actually own their job functions. And now we're at a point where I can go out and truly grow. And we've seen really great results
That's all.
because of that.
A stat we learned in our SEPA certification is 75% of business owners regret selling their business within 1 year. I don't want to get too involved in this, but did that happen? Which I think it did. And how prepared do you think, how much exit planning do you feel like that owner maybe did or did not do, which could have changed that outcome?
Yeah. In in business transactions, there are winners and losers. It just both sides want to win, and there may be, gaining in some areas and losing in others on both sides. And, I do think in this particular transaction, we were very fortunate, and it was very advantageous to us because as we just talked about how the owner was very involved in the business, it burned him out. And in addition to being in the business, 3 other employees in the shop, so, really, we're talking about 75% of the workforce in that print shop were family. His wife worked in the shop, his stepdaughters worked in the shop, and then another employee was pretty much like family, one of those
Yeah.
not blood family, but might
Yeah.
as well be family. And so, families are great when they're great, but we all know families have feuds, and when home and work becomes a blended mess, it will burn you out. And so what I found was that this owner had not thought about selling. He wasn't thinking about, how do I position myself to sell my company for as much money and as I possibly can get. What happened was he reached a point where he was so fed up with coming in because he couldn't deal with the younger generation and how they communicate, and they want to be on their phones, and they just were built completely different than he was. And it's not to say he was right or wrong and one way is better than the other, but we have to understand and be able to say, like, people are gonna communicate differently.
Mhm.
And we need to, as an owner, and you need to be able to train your managers to be able to look at how people communicate differently, but he didn't want any part of that. So it just hit, a switch flipped one day where he's like, I can't do this anymore." And that's when he made a call to a broker to say, "I wanna list my business," and it we I will just leave it at this. We got a very advantageous deal, that I think really benefited us. Uh, but yeah, he was not thinking about a 2, 5, 10-year exit strategy. He let it boil to the point where he said, "I've gotta get out. I've gotta get my family out. I've gotta be done."
That lack of planning meant he couldn't maximize the value of his business. The seller motivation was the burnout, not a planned by design strategy,
Exactly.
is what you're saying. So good. I mean, it's good for you.
Yep.
Very good for you. And I know you guys have grown that thing and it's really successful and they do a really good job. If you need your printing needs.
Yes. I am impressed.
Now, let's talk about the team a little bit because obviously the human capital is where I love to live. Talent strategy is where I love to live. What are some steps maybe you took with that team? You talked about it a little bit. Did you have to assess them first? Did you just interview them? Did you just talk to me a little bit about how you developed that team and got them to take ownership and really run the business?
So one of the things we did spend quite a bit of time leading up to the deal in a due diligence period, and our corporate real estate broker was really great about giving us checklists. We would meet once a week. We would come to his office, and we would go back and forth. So I had a little bit of an idea of the employee base before I ever stepped in to the shop as the owner. So I was able to ask some questions about, what are their job functions, what are their roles, what are their personalities like, and so it was interesting seeing his perception of his staff, and then getting in and realizing, yeah, some of that might make sense, but now it's my turn to kind of assess. And so, one of the things I did when I went in was like, I didn't want to come in guns blazing, making a ton of changes, right out the gate. I needed to build up that capital, right? I needed to build up that trust, show them that I was not coming in to, completely flip their, world upside down. And so there was, for about a month or two, really my goal was I was in the shop a lot, which I know we just said that's not the goal, but to start, I needed to
Mhm.
be there. I needed to learn the processes. I needed to learn the machines. I needed to, meet and, learn my staff and who they are. And so, I met with them all individually. I implemented some different assessments that we used to use a lot, with the DISC profile and Working Genius. Basically, they were all working in silos, right? They all had their little job functions, and then the previous owner was kind of over top of all that. And so I was trying to break that down to get everybody to feel like they were on one collective team. So we did some of that, or some of those assessments, and learned from that of how people communicate, and I think they enjoyed that. They felt like that was me not just coming in and saying, "Go do it," and I'm gonna just kinda be in my office and that's it. They felt like I was taking an active, investment in them and the team and the business. And once I felt like I got that trust from them, and I mean, let's be real, they needed to see a few paychecks come through to make
Mhm.
sure they're gonna get paid, right? Like, we can call it for what it is, but,
Yeah.
a lot of these people, they work for that paycheck that comes biweekly, right? So, they knew they were getting paid, they knew that work wasn't, changing completely, and then that was when I was able to start working on kind of restructuring the team. And there were some painful parts of that. I mean, I still inherited, um, some of the family, of the previous owner, and they were good employees, but I had to wrestle with, like, are they the future?
Yep.
Right? Are we gonna keep living in this gray area of dad, stepdad and mom are gone, but the 2 stepdaughters are there, they do great work, but, Are they going home and talking about what we're doing at work?
Yeah, and we talk about that all the time about how the team that got you here may not get you there.
Exactly, and so ultimately, we were able to, one was a new opportunity, and then one ended up going back to school, and it worked itself out. But that was the point where we really had the entire family network that once was really running the majority of that business out the door, and then we were able to start growing it. They had the trust that I wanted to listen to ideas, I wanted to make things better, and it's amazing that all of these employees had all of these ideas that just were suppressed way down deep because they were scared to bring those to the up
Mhm.
to the previous owner, and now, like, our day-to-day operation in some ways looks very similar to the way it's looked the last 15, 17 years, but there are a lot of things that we do that are very different because people have ideas. I mean, I've had one employee that worked there the entire time. He's been there 17 years and he's got some ideas,
Yeah.
and also, creating a management structure and showing that, them that one, I believe in especially the key employees that have been there, one 17 years, one 11 years, one 6 years. Like, they deserve to own their processes and then have people that work underneath them that they can manage.
So you build a cohesive
So,
team.
yeah, building a cohesive team and actually putting job descriptions together, actually putting incentives in that, have the employees working hard to the end of every month because they know that there is a kickback incentive that is worth showing up and working for, right? And so all of that took a lot of time, but now it's gotten us to a point where we've got 3 managers. One manages the front of the business, one manages the production of the business, and one manages all of our large format. But then, as a general shop manager, when things are needed, he is there to make kind of the final decision and help the other managers as those, items come up.
Now on the incentives, not to get into all your trade secrets, are they an all or nothing, one goal the team either achieves it, or are they individual based on the role within the company?
Yeah, I there are a couple different ways that I do it. I try to have a monthly goal, mainly because I think it keeps people engaged,
Yep.
and it's not an all or nothing. The monthly goal is not an all or nothing, and it's basically it without giving all the trade secrets.
Come on, Corey, just tell it. Open your finance.
Follows our monthly revenue,
Yeah.
right? So the higher the revenue for the month, the higher
Makes sense.
the kickback they get. If we have a slower month, it's not you get nothing and you'll like it. It's you still get something, but it's just indicative of how we perform. And then it's something we did at Evoco, right? We had our annual total revenue goal, and there was an incentive if we hit that. And so I brought that too, right? I look at the numbers, I look at the growth that I want to see, and set a goal that is lofty but attainable. And then I tier that. If we hit this number, your incentive is this. If hit this level, it's more. And if it's a little bit less, then you're working towards that. So it's a month to month, but it's also an annual target that they're working toward.
Yeah, I always find it amazing that, just by giving your employees a piece of the success, your success grows exponentially, right? Yeah, you're giving away some money that you could put in your pocket, right, theoretically, but by giving them a piece of that, it just keeps the business growing and growing and growing.
Absolutely, and the other thing I would, add in addition to that is just being transparent about it. Now, we're not telling everybody what everybody makes and all of that, but previously, there were 1 or 2 employees that kind of got a behind the behind the
Oh, the old yeah,
bonus,
the under
under
the
the
table
table
bonus.
bonus, and everybody kinda knew it, even though the owner thought nobody knew it, if that makes sense, and so, like, I just cut that out and just said, "Look, we are a team. what no matter if you are a customer service representative, welcoming customers when they come in, or you're a large format specialist, or you're cutting business cards, or you're the delivery driver. You all play a role in this team, and we're all going to benefit from you doing your role and your responsibility as well. And so putting that all in the open, I mean, it's amazing. They know how much our revenue is every month, where that never was the case before. But everybody feels bought in. They feel invested. They know they're going to get a personal,
They know if they're winning,
feedback
they
from
know if
it.
they're winning or losing.
Correct. They know if they're winning or losing, and they want to win.
Exactly. Everyone does. We only have a couple minutes left, but one thing I want to know and ask you is you now have got 4 businesses in 3 different industries,
Yep.
which is pretty awesome. Obviously, you've learned every deal, every time. What's something you know now, maybe that you wish you knew in the first deal?
Oh man, we only have a couple minutes.
Take a couple minutes. Yeah.
You know, I think there are 2 ways that I would answer this. One is pretty general, and that's just that it's never gonna be what you expect. You can go through due diligence in deals, you can study the numbers, you can look at, what the cash flow is gonna be, you can look at what your employee, head count is gonna be, and you can dream up the perfect scenario, and you can see yourself stepping in there and making tons of money and just, riding into the sunset. But it's never that. Every deal that we have done, there's been a roadblock, there's been a sharp left turn, whether that is a seller who is maybe not being fully honest on their profit and loss, reports, or whether it is an owner who, made a series of of bad decisions, and you're kind of left cleaning up the mess. It could be hiding the real estate portion of a deal where you inherit a leaky roof, and next thing you know, you're staring down the barrel of a $45,000 roof repair that you weren't expecting, right? It's never gonna be what you expect, and so, in a time of excitement and wanting to, move forward in your investment portfolio, you have to almost worst case scenario it a little bit to make sure that you're tempering your expectations so that you can go in there, expect the unexpected, and deal with it as it comes. It's not gonna be a doomsday situation. You critically think, and then you finally get yourself set, whether that takes 2 months, whether that takes a year, but just knowing that something's gonna come up, you're gonna get through it, but you're eventually gonna get your foundation, you're gonna get your team, and you're gonna move forward. And the specific thing I will say is, or way I would answer this is, I would never, ever do a deal in the future where I buy a business from somebody who agrees to stay on for a 30, 60, 90-day period as a transition period to help learn the industry, because that's what I got myself into with this print shop. And while he held a lot of keys of knowledge of the industry, I was made to believe that nobody else in that room could help. And so I ended up with an owner who saw me running a business very differently than he did, thinking I was going to fail, telling me I was not good enough, not adequate. I was not, every day telling me that I was going to ruin everything he built because I was going to run it differently. And hindsight's always 2020. But if I had just said, pack up and leave on day one that I take over as an owner, that team would have been there to make sure that the machine kept moving,
Yeah.
right? And so that's a very specific example that I've learned, but trust yourself, your knowledge, your ability to think and lean on people, that are not that seller to help you build your business.
That's a good way to wrap it up because one of my favorite sayings, you've heard me say it probably for 10 years now, is you win with your people.
Yeah.
It's never one person, it's your team. We did it at Avoca, right? We always said you don't hire this particular employee, you hire at Avoca, right? It's you win with your team, you win with your people. So, yeah, I think that's a great point. Well, Corey, thank you so much for your time. Again, I know you have a 6-week-old baby, 4 businesses. I know you're very busy, but I appreciate you taking some time to share your insights, very valuable insights into buying businesses, to kinda enhancing those businesses and growing them. Really appreciate it, and thanks so much.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on.